According to your lawsuit, you were hired by a security firm to work security at one of the infamous white parties that was thrown by Sean Combs in the Hamptons. What was that experience like?
At first, he was incredibly friendly, very gracious.
So you had a friendly chat, and then, according to your lawsuit, at some point later in the night, Sean Combs himself offered you a drink. This didn't come from staff or someone holding a tray of drinks. It came from him directly.
Correct. The first drink started to have some effect on me, and I just thought, wow, these are really strong drinks. It wasn't until the second drink, and it was already too late, that I realized that there was something wrong with the drinks. Sadly, Sean Combs was waiting in the wings. He was watching from some sort of vantage point. And once I was in a helpless position and he was sure that he was in a position of power, then he took advantage of the situation.
You allege that you were forcibly pushed into an SUV by Sean Combs. That act alone, according to your lawsuit, left you in considerable pain. And then once inside the vehicle, your lawsuit says plaintiff was held down by Combs, who overpowered him while he struggled to escape due to the effects of the drugs in his system. And it goes on to say that he sodomized you.
I was screaming. I was telling him to stop. It was incredibly painful. And he was acting like it was nothing. And he seemed to be disconnected from it. It was abusive beyond belief.
All right, CNN's Elizabeth Wagmeister, who's been doing really amazing reporting on this subject, is here with your exclusive. What was it like to sit down with this man?
You know, John, this was the first time that he has told anyone other than his attorneys this story. He, as you see, we concealed his identity. He filed his lawsuit back in October as a John Doe. He says that he wants to keep his anonymity because he wants to keep some semblance of his life private. But that's a difficult thing to do, to sit down and tell your story to a stranger as a journalist. So I asked him, why now? Why are you coming forward now? And he said that he did not know that there were other accusers of Sean Combs out there. He only found out from seeing news reports. And there was one report he saw that there is somebody who alleged that they were 9 years old when they say that they were abused by Sean Combs. And this John Doe that I sat down with, he said, if a 9-year-old could do it, then I could do it. And it made him feel like he wished that he spoke out before because he could have prevented children from allegedly being abused. Now, as I said, this lawsuit was initially filed back in October of this year. So these claims are not new, but this is the first time that he sat down. In fact, John, this is the first time that any accuser of Sean Combs has sat down with the media for an interview. Now, I want to play you a bit more of what he told me about these allegations, what he says happened that night in 2007. But I do want to warn our viewers that what he says is graphic and disturbing.
I was screaming. I was telling him to stop. It was incredibly painful. And he was acting like it was nothing. And he seemed to be disconnected from it. It was abusive beyond belief.
Now, he says that not a day has gone by where he hasn't thought about this. He said that when something like this happens to you, which is, of course, his allegation that he was drugged and sodomized by Sean Combs back in 2007, he says that it impacts every part of your life. He says that he has not been able to carry on with relationships. He says that he did not tell his wife at the time, who he was married to when this allegedly happened to him. He hasn't told family members or coworkers. And again, that is one of the big reasons why he wants to remain anonymous.
Incredible to hear him tell this story. All right, Elizabeth Wagmeister, thank you very much. Sarah.
All right, joining us now, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson to discuss more about this. All right, first of all, this is a civil lawsuit. Yes. It is not part of the criminal prosecution. But in hearing this, and now that he is coming out to speak, could it be?
So we'll see. There's a lot that has to be unpacked, right? The first thing is remember, Sarah, that this was an amended complaint. Why do I say that, and why is that significant? It's significant because initially when it was filed in October, there was the indication that it happened in 2007, right? Learning, however, that P. Diddy was in St. Tropez then, so it could not have happened then. So it was amended to include, right, the year after, okay? That's a problem. There was also the indication initially that, right, he wasn't married, and now we're learning he is. Why do I say that? Because every case turns on its facts. So if you're going to determine, right, civil, it's a civil case, it involves monetary damages, not criminal, you're going to assess the credibility of it. Now, attorneys for, of course, P. Diddy are going to have a field day with that, of course, because when you sit down with your lawyer, you verify. Your lawyer doesn't say, oh, that's what happened, okay. You verify it, you vet it, you ensure that it's factually accurate. And so therefore, I think those two distinctions are going to be very important. Would you have not known that you were married at this time? Would you have not known? Should you have shared it with your spouse? Potentially not. It's embarrassing, but did you know you were married at all? Did you know where you were, when you were, etc.? So it's a question of fact, and I think it'll be vetted certainly by criminal investigators to determine whether or not it's useful, and then it'll be up to the judge to determine whether it is admissible.
I am curious about something. He told our Elizabeth Wagmeister there that he'd not told anyone about this until he spoke, I think, to his attorneys. How difficult will it be to prove this?
So what ends up happening is that, you know, there's a lot of embarrassment and a lot of shame, right? And there's a lot of sensitivity as it relates to victims. And sometimes you have a victim, and it's called recent outcry information, where they'll say something to a friend, I can't believe it. That's powerful evidence. In some circumstances, there's humiliation, and they don't. And there are experts who will testify to that. On the issue of proof, however, there's the indication that a celebrity was present. That's according to this particular victim, Elizabeth doing an excellent job in that interview. But there was the issue of, hey, there's a celebrity present. Does that celebrity come forward? There's the indication that he told his supervisor, he being the victim who worked for a private security company, telling his supervisor. Will the supervisor come forward? Did anybody else know? So these are all questions of proof. And to the extent that you have corroboration, meaning it's not just you, there's other people, it's easier to establish your claim.
And speaking of this idea of shame that victims often feel, this victim has not wanted to be named. He is not named in the suit. He is still a John Doe. How long can that last? Because at some point, right, that has to change, correct?
So, yes. So, Sarah, it's up to the discretion of the judge. And what the judge does is a balancing test between your right to privacy, intimidation, humiliation, a number of other factors, right? To what extent could you be retaliated against, et cetera, versus the public interest. And also, right, the party you're suing certainly has an interest. And so a judge will assess various factors, weigh those factors, and make an assessment as to whether or not the John Doe continues or it ends.
Joey Jackson, it is always a pleasure. You always get through all of the hard details with us, and I really appreciate it.
Pleasure's mine. Good to see you, Sarah.
Good to see you.